Hello, my name is Caleb Ariano, and I'll be presenting funerary rituals across cultures for COMM 10 with Professor Wells. And today I am presenting funerary rituals across cultures. Um, and I'm studying them because every culture has its own way of saying goodbye. These rituals reveal how people understand life, loss, and the continuation of meaning after death. I will compare the practices of the United States, Mexico, and Japan to show how each country creates structure during grief. So, funerary rituals include ceremonies, gatherings, and symbolic actions that guide a family through mourning, and they show what a community values when it faces loss. By comparing these three countries, we can see how culture influences emotion and behavior even when people cannot rely on words. In the United States, funerary practices center on structure and personal reflection. Services often take place in churches or funeral homes. Families listen to eulogies that describe the person's life. The mood remains reserved because grief is treated as a private emotion. Burial and cremation are both common. The focus stays on closure. The ritual allows people to take a final moment, of recognition before stepping back into the pace of daily life. Mexico draws from deep religious tradition and indigenous belief when approaching its funerary rituals. Families create altars with candles and marigolds. These objects create an atmosphere of warmth rather than silence. Food appears because it's a quintessential part of Mexican culture, Mexican life, identity. It is not necessarily symbolic in as much as it is integrated into daily life, into the celebration of many of its um, holidays, if you will. Also, the abundance of food promotes community because everybody can partake in vitality. Um, it is simply a part of what a community looks like. And mourning is a shared act. Rituals like Dia de los Muertos show how remembrance and celebration coexist. People honor the life that shaped their own, and they do it in a way that feels natural to the culture. Moving onward to Japan, Japan approaches funerary rituals with order shaped by Buddhist teachings. Families prepare altars with incense, they have framed photographs and offerings. A monk leads chants that steady the ceremony. Cremation is the dominant practice, and it follows a sequence that expresses respect for the spirit and the body. The atmosphere remains quiet because grief is shown through calm movement. And I'll try to get away out of this picture thing. And you can see the. I'm not really used to this, so forgive me. Every gesture carries intention, and these rituals support the family by giving them a clear path to follow during a difficult moment. Now, moving onward into the textbook concepts, one of them I wanted to visit was proxemics, and it helps explain the differences between these. The United States funerals, they show a larger personal space and quiet seating, whereas Mexico allows closer distance because support is expressed through company and through physical touch and contact. Japan uses ritual spacing around the altar and around the incense offerings. So space has its own way of communicating. Space is the medium in what it's effectively communicating between people, and the way it is used dictates the way that you're feeling, the implied meaning behind it. And it tells people how to move and to show respect in each given culture. I have to get out of the way for this one. So, individualism versus collectivism is another concept that I like to touch on. Um, and in the United States, it leans heavily towards individualism when grieving, and people focus on the personal reflection and the private emotion that it's very a subjective experience in its own kind of way. Um, whereas in Mexico, it leans toward collectivism more so. Families gather as a group, and the entire community may participate. It's just kind of how Mexicans roll, like a 1-year-old birthday. It's just everybody's a part of it. It's cool in that way. And then Japan leans collectivist, but for its own reasons, for funerary rituals that center around duty and ancestral respect. So and they're kind of like a bigger picture, more explicit picture in a way. Um, so these cultures, that's how they value um, that kind of space and that kind of camaraderie or individualism. Like the United States is just kind of everybody's on their own thing in a way. And so moving onward, we got high versus low context communication. And this is my third concept. The United States uses low context communication during their funerals. They um, tend to lean towards clear, effective speeches, eulogies, programs that guide the service, that kind of thing. Whereas Mexico and Japan use high context, communication, and their focus on symbols such as candles, flowers, incense, and movement. Meaning is carried through ritual rather than long explanations on who this person was and how they lived their life and whatnot. So the similarities between these cultures is that they all respect the dead and they all use some ritual to bring emotional support, respective of how they deal with that emotion or how they deal with, um, or the modus of however they decide to grieve. And the differences are actually um, they appear in how emotion is expressed. That's the nuance, and how the community participates. So the United States leans towards privacy, whereas Mexico leans towards openness and shared presence. And then Japan just leads towards order and spiritual continuity. So they're more regiment, they have more they're locked in. The Mexicans, they like to get the community involved, uh, and feel it as an entire. It's such a strange nuance in collectivism between Mexico and Japan. It's really cool. Anyways, these differences highlight how culture shapes behavior during moments of loss. So, in conclusion, the funerary rituals show how each culture understands life and death, loss and remembrance. The United States seeks closure through structure. Mexico holds remembrance and celebration together as one thing. And Japan guides the spirit and the family with calm discipline, if you were to say it succinctly. By comparing these practices, we can see how communication happens even without words. Cultures shape how people stand together during loss and how they find their way forward. And this project shows that the funerary rituals are not only about death, but they are about the meaning a community chooses to carry into the future for generations to come and the influence it has on their lives in the present. Thank you for watching this, and I hope you have gained some type of well, I hope that it added to your worldview in some way. Thank you.